evening, tabletop gamers. My name is LeunameGames. Welcome back to LeunameGames. Today we're going to learn how to play the 2 to 5 player semi-cooperative game Dead of Winter by Issac Vega and John Gilmore and published by Plaid Hat Games. In Dead of Winter, players all control a group of survivors that have all come together to form a colony to try to survive the worst winter in the zombie apocalypse. And the entire group, or possibly most of the group, are going to be working together to try to accomplish a group goal, while each player also tries to complete a secret goal for themselves. Let's get to the table and let's see what's in the box. To set up the game, you're first going to need to place the main board in the center of your playing area. Then you're going to need to place these 6 locations around the main board. You can set these locations up any way you want to. I've just chosen to put them all like this because that's the only way I could fit them all in the camera. Next, you need to give each player a reference sheet. Each of these reference sheets comes with a lot of stuff that you'll need to know. Each of these comes with a round summary of what happens each round, what you can do on your turn, where you can put your survivors, where you put your secret objective, and where you put your dice. I'll explain all of this later. Next, you need a main objective. There are several main objectives that come with the game, each of which comes with a setup, a victory condition, and a relative estimate time of how long the game will be. You can choose which one of these you want to play, or you can just randomly shuffle them up and pick one. Whatever you do, you take the one that was picked and you place it right here on the main board. Next, you need to set up the game following all the instructions on the setup portion of the main objective card. For example, this one is "We need more samples." This says to place the morale at 6, which you use this blue counter to track it. You place the round track, which you use this red marker, also at 6. And then you add 1 zombie to all non-colony locations. Each of the locations outside of the main board are considered non-colony locations, and there's a couple things you need to know about each of these. There are these circles up here where the picture is. This is where you place survivors, and there's a limited amount of survivors that can go here. The little ones with the biohazard symbol are where you place zombies. There's a little spot down here with a magnifying glass. That's where you place a search deck, which I'll get to in a moment. And then there are these little spots here where you place rummaging tokens, which I'll also get to. And then up here, there is a tracker of going from left to right, the likelihood of you finding certain items. For example, at the school, you're most likely to find food, but there's a chance you could find some medicine. Whereas places like the police station down here, you're most likely to find weapons, and you're least likely to find survivors. So in the case of "We need more samples," you would add 1 of these zombie standees to each of the outside locations. Adding zombies to the colony during setup is a bit different, as the colony has 6 different entrances to where zombies can come in. So for example, if we were setting up for the too many mouths scenario, that one would tell us to add 6 zombies to the colony. When you're told to place zombies at the colony, you would add them one at a time in numerical order of these gates. So for example, if I were to add 6, I would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If at any point you were to add more than 6 zombies, let's say I was just told to add 8, you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next, you need to give each player a secret objective. There are loyal and betrayal objectives, and what you're going to do is that you're going to take the loyal objectives, shuffle 2 per player into a single deck. Then you're going to take 1 randomly selected betrayal card and put it in the deck. Next, give 1 to each player. How you do that is up to you. You can randomly deal them out, or you can have each player choose 1, but make sure only the player who receives the secret objective can see it. And any extras that you have go back in the box without anybody seeing them. Next, take this deck of crisis cards, shuffle them up, and place them here. Shuffle the Survivor, Exiled, and Crossroads cards, and place them all face down nearby. Next, finish setting up the locations by taking the deck of items that matches the name of the place that they belong to, and place them on the appropriate places. Then take this deck of starter items, shuffle it up, and deal 5 to each player. Next, you're going to deal 4 survivors to each player. Each player is then going to choose 2 of these survivors to keep. Any of the others are going to get returned to the box. Each survivor has a couple bits of information you need to know. First is this number right here. This is how influential they are. This determines who goes first at the beginning of the game, as well as some other things that I'll go over later on. This number right here indicates the value that you need a die to be or higher in order to attack with this survivor. This one with the magnifying glass determines what value you need a die to be or higher in order to search with this survivor. And then down here, each survivor actually has an ability that contains where they can use it, how often they can use it, and what the ability actually is. Each player chooses one of the survivors they have to be their group's leader, and they place it here. The rest become followers, which they place here. The players will get those matching standees for those characters, which you will place in the circles of the colony. You'll also start with 3 dice to roll, 1 for yourself and 1 for each survivor that you control. If during the setup the main objective asks you to add helpless survivors to the colony, add these tokens here to the same spots as the regular survivors, filling up them, and you would treat them as if they were normal survivors, but nobody controls them. Give the player whose leader has the highest influence the first player marker, and you are ready to begin. Each round of the game is divided into 2 phases that must be resolved in this order: the player's turn phase and the colony phase. During the player turns phase, you need to resolve these 3 events in order. First, you need to take the top card of the crisis deck and reveal it to everybody. Next, each player will roll their dice, place them in their unused action die pool, and then each player gets their turn, starting with the first player. But before you do anything on your turn, the player to your right must first draw a crossroads card and then read the italicized text on it silently to themselves. Each of these cards has a condition that, if met, the player who has the card will pause the game and read the entire card out loud to the group. For example, this one here says if there is at least 1 helpless survivor at the colony, or this one, if a survivor the player controls is at the library, or this one, if the player moves a non-exiled survivor. There's a bunch of different ones that can trigger if the player does different things. If the card says things like option 1 or option 2, then the player whose turn it is decides on what option they're going to be doing. If it says thumbs up or thumbs down, all the players that have a survivor at the colony will get a vote. Players can talk about what they want to do, but by the time they reach 0, all players must present their vote. Whoever has the most votes takes effect, and the ties will be broken by the first player. After you resolve the crossroads card, just remove it from the game. However, if by the end of the turn the crossroads did not trigger, simply put it on the bottom of the deck. On their turn, they can take as many actions that they can or want to, and there's a bunch of different actions that you can choose from. Some actions do not require dice, but some do. You can choose to play a card from your hand for its effect. For example, this food card allows me to add food to the supply. When you play a card, you play it to the appropriate area that it says on here. For example, this one says the waste pile, which you will put here. Some item cards do say to equip them. To do that, simply just put them underneath one of the survivors you control. Another thing you can do is to contribute to the crisis. You can contribute as many cards as you want to the crisis, either to try to prevent the crisis from happening, or make it more likely to occur if you are the trader. When you contribute crisis cards, you can contribute as many as you want, but they all have to go here face down, so nobody knows what is in there. Another action you can do is to move a survivor. You can choose to move a survivor anywhere you want to. You can move the survivor from the colony to an outside location, from one location to another location, or from an outside location back to the colony. However, each character can only be moved once per round, and every time you move a character, you have to roll the exposure die. So you would roll the die and resolve its effect. If you roll nothing, then you're good to go. If you roll a wound, you will place a wound token on the character that you moved. 3 wounds will kill your character. If you rolled a frostbite right here, then you add a frostbite token to your character. Frostbites count as a wound, but they will also cause a new wound at the beginning of every one of your turns. And if you roll this tooth, then your character was bitten by a zombie and it dies immediately. When a character dies, remove the standee and the character card from the game. Every time a survivor dies, reduce morale by 1. If there were other survivors at the location where the survivor died, the player who has the character with the lowest influence has the option to either kill that character immediately or roll the exposure die again. If you roll blank, the infection stops and you're good. But if you roll any other symbol, that character is also killed off and the bright spreads again to the character with the lowest influence. The player who controls that character gets that same option to either kill off that character or to roll the die. If there was no survivors at the location where the survivor died, then the bite does not spread. You can avoid having to roll the exposure die if you had played a fuel card to the waste pile before you moved. You can also spend food tokens to increase your die result. For each token that you spend and remove from the supply, you can increase the result of one of your die rolls by 1. Though you might want to consider talking about that with the other players. And when you do go to increase the die result, the die has to be unused. You can also request 1 or more items from other players. Every player has the option of giving one of those items to you. However, that item has to immediately be used. However, that item cannot be used to be contributed to the crisis. If one of your survivors shares a location with another survivor, whether it's yours or another player's, and you have an item card equipped, you can hand the item off to that survivor by unequipping it from you and equipping it to the other survivor. Keep in mind, if it has a once per round ability and it was already used, it cannot be used again by the survivor who just received it until the next round. The last thing you can do without using a die is once per round, you can initiate a vote to exile another player. If you initiate a vote to exile, each player has to simultaneously vote yes or no. Whoever has the most votes takes effect, and ties are always broken by the first player. However, you cannot initiate a vote to exile yourself. So those are all the things that you can do without having to spend a die. Here's what you can do that does need a die. The first thing is to build a barricade. If you have a survivor at a location where there are biohazard symbols open, you can spend a die of any value you want to place a barricade at that survivor's location. If you have a survivor at the colony, you can spend a die of any value to take 3 cards from the waste pile and remove them from the game. You can also attract zombies. To attract a zombie, choose a survivor you control, then spend a die of any value, and that will allow you to move 2 zombies from any location on the board to any open spaces that your survivor is at. You can attack a zombie or a survivor. To attack a zombie, you have to spend a die that has a value of equal to or higher than the attack value of the survivor you're attacking with. For example, Thomas Hart's attack is a 1, so I could simply just spend a 1 to attack this zombie. The zombie is automatically killed. However, every time you kill a zombie, unless you use a card that says otherwise, you have to roll the exposure die. Well, great. If you want to attack another survivor, let's say Thomas wanted to attack John, you will use the same type of die, 1 equal to or higher than your attack value, but this time you will roll the die. And when you roll the die, in order to hit the survivor, you have to roll a result that is equal to or less than the survivor's attack value. For example, John's is a 3, but Thomas rolled a 6, so in this case, Thomas would have missed. If you miss, nothing happens. If you hit the other survivor, then the survivor you are attacking gains a wound. If you hit the survivor, you cause a wound to that survivor, and you get to randomly take a card from the hand of the player who controls that survivor. The last thing you can do on your turn that needs a die is to search. To search, choose the survivor you control at a location with a deck. Spend a die that is equal to or higher than the value on that character. That will allow you to draw 1 card from the deck. You can look at it, but don't put it in your hand just yet, because after every time you draw a card, you have the option of either accepting it into your hand, which will end that particular search action, or you can choose to make noise. If you choose to make noise, you take one of these rummaging tokens, put it on one of the open spaces, draw another card, and you can look at it. You can do this multiple times as long as there are still open spaces. Once you choose to stop, or you can't rummage anymore, you then choose one of the cards that you've drawn, put it in your hand, putting the rest on the bottom of the deck. Once every player has done all the actions they wanted or are able to, the round is over and we move on to the colony phase. During the colony phase, there are 7 things that have to be done in this order. Count all the survivors in the colony, including helpless ones, divide by 2 and round up. That is how much food tokens you will need. For example, there are 6 survivors in the colony right now. That means we would need 3 food tokens. Thankfully, we do have more than that, so we would just simply remove the necessary tokens and everything is good. Any extras stay there. If you don't have enough food tokens, then the food tokens that are there will stay there, but you add a starvation token and immediately reduce morale by 1. In future rounds, as long as you can keep feeding your people, ignore the starvation token. However, if in another round you can't feed your people again, add another one and reduce morale by 2, and so on. For every set of 10 cards that are in the waste, reduce morale by 1. Take all the cards that were in the crisis contributions, quickly shuffle them, and then reveal them one by one. Each card that has the matching symbol that's on the crisis card counts as 1 success to preventing the crisis. Each card that does not have the matching symbol takes away 1 success. For example, in this set, we have 5 medicine cards and a fuel card. The fuel card would take away one of the medicine cards, but we still have 4 medicines. So if we were playing a 4 or 3 or 2 player game, that means we'd still have enough and the crisis was prevented. If not, then resolve the fail effect on the crisis card. After you resolve the crisis, remove that card from the game. For every survivor at a location outside the colony, you will add 1 zombie to an open entranceway. Adding zombies to the colony is like paying food. Count the number of survivors that are in there, divide by 2 and round up, and that is how many zombies you place in the various gateways following the different numbered gates like in the setup. If at a location there are rummaging tiles after you place zombies, remove them one at a time and then roll a die and consider the following results. If you have to place a zombie but there is no space for it, but there is a barricade there, then remove the barricade and don't place the zombie. If you have to add a zombie to an area but it's already filled up with zombies, that entrance is set to be overrun and the survivor with the lowest influence automatically dies. After placing zombies, check to see if the main objective has been completed. If so, the game immediately ends. If not, move the round tracker down 1, give the first player token to the next player counterclockwise, and you keep going. The game ends immediately if the main objective is completed, or when the round marker reaches 0, or the morale track reaches 0. At that point, everybody reveals their secret objective, and if they completed everything on the card, they win. If not, they lose. If you are ever exiled from the colony, first draw the top card of the exiled deck. And if you are the traitor, then you keep your objective a secret, but your first goal is changed to whatever it says. If you're not the traitor, reveal your main objective, remove it from the game, because this is now your objective. Also, make sure you remove all your survivors from the colony and place them at whatever location you want on the outside. Exiled players cannot move their survivors back into the colony for the rest of the game. You are also not allowed to contribute to the crisis, spend tokens to increase your die result, you are not allowed to vote on a crossroads card, and the colony does not lose a morale if an exiled survivor is killed. But you want to be careful about exiling someone, because if 2 players are exiled and neither of them were the traitor, morale immediately drops to 0. And that is everything you need to know in order to play Dead Winter. As always, if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will get to them. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. That means a lot to me. If you want to know my thoughts on Dead of Winter, or you want to know how to play more games, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more tutorials, reviews, and unboxings. Thank you all as always so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.